I just want to share what happened to me in Romania. So I've written some notes down, so I'm half reading my notes and half free flowing. So on 22/02/2022, I want to believe at 2:22 in the morning, my mother had passed away in her sleep. This was no surprise for me, as I found out this year that she had pancreatic cancer. I knew that she was unwell last year, and she refused to see me because she was vulnerable and didn't want to pick up any variants of COVID. So this created some sadness and confusion in my heart. And I asked questions to myself, like why? And it brought up a lot of childhood insecurities, if you like, of not feeling worthy enough of love. What did I do wrong? What's so wrong with me? But not to be the victim here. So I've just read out a few things that I've written down. As a child, we feel connected to our parents and feel a part of them. So as a child, I thought not worthy of love was a reflection in me. But since discovering the Wim Hof Method and practicing it for 7 years and embracing the philosophy of the Wim Hof Method, it has been definitely the best therapy for me. I've naturally reached a point of clarity along my journey that I don't see Mum's final actions to erase me from her life as not being deserving to be loved. My spiritual awakening has 7 years ago has introduced me to even more wonderful people in my life and on my journey, and each one of them has given me a learning lesson or pieces of my jigsaw of life. I believe now that I had a soul wound that I don't deserve to be loved or cared for. I also believe that I have an open heart, and it's easy to feel that wound because I attracted parents who don't like to love or show me love. My soul has chosen this start in life. This is something that I uncovered on my journey. I knew that I would have a brief womb life, if you like, with my birth mum, and I would live my life with my adoptive parents. By the way, when I write down my thoughts or just share this in a vlog, don't mistake my vulnerability as being unbalanced. It's just feeling vulnerable, that's all, as sometimes I do in the cold water. So in summary, how people treat us is a reflection of us. Why was I unworthy of love? But now I understand it's possibly to do with my mother's capability to love. Perhaps she wasn't able to love herself. And for me, that's like mirror work, which I have been doing a lot of. It's safe to say, as a child, could be interpreted as intuition, but also from past experience of my subconscious of keeping me safe. So maybe there's a little bit of a paradox there of the two. My perspective in looking at my mirror work, my energy is that I attracted parents to let me down, and this led to my mirror work of have I let myself down. My relationship in my 20s was of sadness. Once upon a time, I numbed my sadness with alcohol. But since discovering the Wim Hof Method, which is definitely more than breathwork and ice bath, I've personally evolved to a belief system that there is no binary right or wrong. I've slowly peeled away my fears and, just by choosing to accept them, admitting to my part played, dissolve them or release them, and furthermore, no judgment of others. One pillar of the Wim Hof Method is the cold exposure, and that's definitely helped me with my mirror work, as the cold is a mirror of your emotions. Second pillar is breath work, and sometimes when I do my breath work I see like a soft lavender colours, and it brings up a lot of peace in me and subsequently healing, which is all great for like the grand finale that happened on 22/02/2022. Not being able to have this resolution with Mum, to even say that, perhaps, there isn't anything wrong with me, or I am doing well, or I'm sorry, not to have that final chat with her, initially bugged me and frustrated me. But I feel now it wasn't necessary, as I'm, at peace with myself. There's nothing more I could do. I didn't want to agitate her towards the end. And I send love and compassion. I even made a YouTube video at the beginning of January regarding this. I've had a deep knowing that nature heals me. I live and work in the mountains and lakes. And I'm also quite aware that on a cosmic level of love is there for me, and it doesn't really matter sort of what happens on the lower levels of the low vibrations, or 3D levels, if you like, because I feel very comfortable tapping into the higher love of the universe and being receptive to that. So how I receive love that way, really, I feel nourishes my soul. This is why I decided to hike in Romania whilst I wait for my mum's sort of news, if you like, rather than just sort of waiting around the phone, as I, wasn't involved in the family nucleus. And it was kind of, flaving my monkey mind. So I knew the hike would do me good. So I heard about this hike last year, and having walked the Camino de Santiago, I thought, well, it's in the blood. Why not try this VT in Romania? And I started at the sort of northern border to Ukraine. And as I began to walk, it was super hard, a lot harder than the start of the Spanish Camino. But it was probably exactly what I needed to get out of my head and back into my body. So I began to sort of ponder about my relationships, and maybe my relationship with mum has affected my relationships with other people. And I kind of think now, dissecting it, that I probably thought I would be let down. So having had that from my parents, so I kind of been learning to sort of, unlearn and relearn with that. I also pondered along the way that, as mentioned earlier, people are mirrors. So the fact that I let myself down, I kind of wondered and I thank my ego for stepping in and sometimes not going through things like commitments, because my ego is my protector, and I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for that. So I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but ultimately it's something that I really want to consciously change, if you like, that from the I don't deserve to be supported, and I concluded I push people away from fear, or being afraid. So if I know this, what's deep down, then hopefully I can start to open up and feel initially that vulnerability, but then beyond that becomes power. So, and I know this from the cold. The cold has broken me down inside, but I feel more connected to myself, and that has brought me back to a deeper level of connection with others as I stand more in my truth. I know it's a paradox, not risking asking for help, yet I deserve support, and that's something I'm working with. So as I turned my attention to nature whilst I was hiking on day 3, in the fresh snow, I feel like the essence of who I am, both beautiful and powerful. So it's interesting as I dissect my relationship with the cold. Initially, I was always after the cold, and 1 year wearing shorts. Yes, I walked the Camino in January. And now I live in a van with no heating or insulation. But today I'm more in balance, and it's the cold that has brought my attention to nurture. So I sort of self-love in a nice way without being egotistical. It's just like that word nurture, I've always kind of questioned what does it mean to me. I've even done an animal management degree, science degree, to make me understand more nature versus nurture. And having sort of thought about it, I don't know whether I share this with many other people who've had a similar start in life for me, is that I realise it's about perception. I used to believe nurturing hurts, which is probably why I kind of abandoned that for me. I remember like my mum's love was quite aggressive when I was a child, and I could say now that I didn't understand it was meant in a loving way. So I was like, oh, great, nurturing, but I don't know if I want nurturing. I think I associated with nurturing with like not allowed to express or complain or ask questions of who I am. As like any child who was adopted, I was curious of who did I look like, where did I come from? Instead, I was told to keep a big family secret, that my to keep my illegal adoption quiet, and if I shared it with any, I was told that mummy and daddy could go to jail. So quite a big thing, I think, for a 6 5-6-year-old to have, but I perhaps didn't realise the severity of that until I grew up a little bit more. So finally, I suppose at the age of 36, it probably should have happened a lot earlier. I found the tools of the Wim Hof Method, that I can trust myself. I decided to tell the world that I was adopted, and I did that on this YouTube channel. And as I figured it wasn't my secret to keep at the time, I felt that's my mum's story, but not my story. And at the time, I needed my identity. But now it doesn't matter about my identity and the labels of being an adoptee. I prefer to be everywhere and nowhere, and this is my way now. And I've come to peace with that side of life, if you like. So as I was walking more, I thought, well, I suppose Mum lost, now that she's passed, her bitterness and her anger in life. So and then I kind of wondered what caused this desire for her to be angry, to make people her victims, if you like, to do harm. I know she's a Scorpio, so I know she has that kind of sting in her tail. But physically and emotionally cutting me out of her inheritance, I think she knew that would hurt me. But ultimately, we're not separated. We're all one, and I've discussed this with another member of the family. So whatever hurt she gave, she was also giving the hurt to herself. So I kind of think that maybe there was some stuff that Mum didn't tell me, and probably some of this started before I was born, maybe from childhood. Maybe something happened to her that you hurt me, so I hurt you. And I believe now that she was probably ridiculed as a child by an adult in her life, and that caused her to cut off her emotions, that it was so she wouldn't hurt anymore. As it was probably far too big for her to deal with as a child. So I guess we all have childhood wounds, and definitely my mum's generation was kind of left unspoken or stiff upper lip, if you like. But at least now I know that she's at peace and she doesn't have to carry that burden anymore. So I believe now that Mum's energy is lighter, and I've had an energy cleanse for myself as well, because I kind of don't want to continue with Mum's blaming and bitterness in my life, and I don't need that energy in my life anymore. It doesn't mean I don't need my mum and her spirit, if you like, but it's just nice to know that I've had a cleanse as well, so I can move on. So I've actually found my mum's passing really easy to forgive. And in fact, part of me thinks that there's nothing really to forgive, as I know she's in a better place now. So although I was placed in the space of an adoptee, which had kind of like a strange relationship with her mum, I did ask for it in my soul, I suppose, commitment to come on earth. And I believe in response in all is love. So I'm able to break free from it. And it has been 7 years of self-reflection as well. I feel really free, and I feel, free to love as well. There's so much out there, and it's like, for me, it's like given another start in life. So although I've lost a mother, I've gained Mother Nature as my mother, and she is here for everyone. So one big family for all. And yeah, so these are my thoughts. I don't hold any bitterness for Mum, for my mother, the way that it happened. And I hope these make sense, and maybe you can take some comfort or joy, or just kind of understand why I made the decisions that I did. I enjoyed the walk. It was definitely very healing for me, and it was ahead of time, as I wasn't waiting by the phone. I took back my control and naturally released my emotions in nature. It was there waiting for me. It was a perfect decision, the right time, and I really enjoyed my 5 days on the Romanian Camino.